I did bring you on under the guise of discussing the players and teams that we're most interested in seeing for the rest of the year, but I forced Pelicans Lakers into that umbrella. And the Pelicans are actually one of the teams for me. So I'm just curious as if you have any overarching thoughts on their season, I'd love to hear those. But I was first and foremost curious about what you thought about the CJ McCollum fit in New Orleans since the trade deadline.
It's been great. I've been begging for a while now for them to just get another guard who can create, and they got a high level one. My concern was actually the defense, but they've actually defended very well with Ingram and CJ on the court together, which has been a pleasant surprise. But it's been an pleasant surprise with CJ. But what I didn't know was how good of a playmaker he was. He's a very good playmaker, a passer. I think a lot of that was Barry playing alongside Dame because Dame's always going to be the number one there. So he kind of took a back seat in that regard, for the betterment of the team. But he's definitely got some better playmaking chops than I thought. So that's been pleasant to watch. But overall, just very pleased. If that team can ever get some good luck health-wise, man, they could be really good. They get Zion upright, and then you got Ingram, who's playing probably the best ball of his career, catches not a phantom, but he got his hamstring injury. You can't even see it on during the game when he tweaked it, right? And then CJ catches COVID at the end of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So just bad luck all around, but they're hanging tough in that 10th spot. So we'll see what happens.
Did you think people were overthinking that trade in the first place? We just trolled the Pelicans for trying to use cap space and missing on Kyle Lowry.
Right.
And then the sweeping response was, why would you waste all this flexibility on CJ McCollum? It was like sort of we can't have this both ways.
Right.
And I just don't view cap flexibility as like a huge asset in the New Orleans market.
I was just going to say that. I think a lot of times on NBA Twitter, I think people just like to breed the contrarian, right? Because it just brings engagement and, all controversy, it brings attention. But I think, they swung for Lowry and Chris Paul in the offseason, whiffed badly. Had to salvage losing Lonzo with the Devontae Graham signing, which hadn't worked out great. They really needed a guard, and I think the best way for a small market team who's not a free agent, hotbed, to bring guys in and convince them to stay is through trades. You trade for CJ, you sell him on the area, try to get him to win, and then commit long term there, and then his contract is up. When Zion and Ingram's extension kicks in, so if it's not working out by then, it's an easy decision to make, but you can't fault them for this trade at all. And I've been a very critical of Griff over the last few years, but you can't fault him at all for that deal, in my opinion. Only asset you gave up was, young asset was Nickeil Alexander Walker. Josh Hart's having a career year, but you got to give up something when you're getting a player of CJ McCollum's caliber. So I think it's a trade that's going to work out for both teams, honestly.
Yeah, and it was like you said at the top, he filled such a clear need for them this season.
Yes.
They had the worst shooting backcourt in the league this year. They needed CJ McCollum, who's come in and is shooting 60+% on twos outside the paint, right? Like that's like absurd even for CJ McCollum.
Right. It's just, I mean, a lot of it is, the leap that Ingram took as far as playmaking and the attention he was getting. It just frees up another guard who's going to, make plays. I remember there was a play against Phoenix when they, BI started getting it going. They start throwing the kitchen sink. This is the Phoenix thing, and they won a couple weeks ago. Not the one they got blown out in yesterday without Ingram, of course. They tried to load up on Ingram on the front side, and he just kicked it to the backside of CJ, and it's just 1-on-1. And, he's going to win that 90% of the time with his skill set. So I'm just looking forward to stuff like that. And then you sprinkle Zion in on top of that. I mean, this team could really be something if they just can get these guys healthy and on the floor at the same time. And also want to add a kudos to Willie Green, man, because, that team started off 1-12 with no Zion. They definitely could have let go of the rope. He just did not allow it to happen. And, they are playing, good basketball overall. A little bit of a tough stretch once Ingram went down. But overall, since that 1-12 start, I think they've been, around a 500 team, if I recall correctly, which is, pretty tough given, not having Zion. So that's good for me.
That's a perfect segue into my next two questions. You had mentioned Brandon Ingram playing career ball and the playmaking leap. What specifically have you noticed that's different about, like, the passing numbers, of course, back it up, right, but like, what is he seeing or doing differently as a playmaker this year that he hasn't in years past?
I think he started last year, but the thing I've noticed is he doesn't drive anymore with the preconceived action in his mind. Like I think in his younger part of his career, he would like I'm driving to score, and then the shot would just go up regardless. So I'm driving a pass, and the pass will go up regardless. I think he's reading the game as it comes to him, and I think that's a huge step to becoming a great playmaker. And a lot of guys don't reach it, so I think it's a key milestone for him. As in, I'm going to drive, and then whatever the defense gives me, I'm going to take. But it's hard because that decision comes like this on NBA basketball, right? So everybody doesn't get it. So I think him getting that into his game is just going to make him that much more deadly, especially like I said, when Zion and CJ get together and they get some chemistry. I think just having that in his game is going to make him so much more of a deadly player.
I don't know how you're going to defend an offense that has Zion Williamson and CJ Brandon Ingram like in it, but I just don't. I'm hoping. I don't know if we'll get to see it this season. I know you alluded to something in your live episode last week that maybe we'd hear some good Zion Williamson news for a change in the upcoming week or something.
Yeah, I talked to somebody who's kind of somewhat tapped in on the outskirts out there, and they said that possibly maybe towards the end of the month you might hear some good news about him possibly trying to give it a go. It's just tough because they only have 6 games in April. Then it's the play-in if they make it. So that's the only decision they got to make. Is it worth pushing them out there, or just giving them the whole offseason to rehab and rest? So we're at that kind of tipping point at this point. We got to make that decision. But I think he's trending upward though. He did come back as everybody saw it. He's back with the team, which is good. So we'll see at the end of the month what they say.
Even looking beyond this season, like what does a healthy Zion Williamson do to this Pelicans team ceiling? Like, would it be unrealistic if we're looking ahead to next year? Let's just say he's fully healthy. Don't they feel like they could maybe be a top 4 team in the West just based off what they've done?
It's just without him. Yeah, you know what? I think in theory, but if you just look realistically, so the Warriors are going to be there. You got to understand the Clippers are getting 55 points a game back next season. Denver's getting Porter and Murray back next season. So I think, those are your top 3. Phoenix is not going anywhere. So I think that's your top 4. And then you can never count out LeBron and AD depending on what they do in the offseason. So I think those are your top 5 teams probably. So I think a goal for them is to just try to avoid the play-in. I think a realistic goal is to try to avoid the play-in. But I just think the West is going to be too hectic next year to shoot for top 4. It's just, not realistic given what a couple of other teams are having to come back into the fold.
Do you place any stock in just the Zion Williamson chatter over the past year and a half about whether it's his conditioning, his commitment or lack thereof to the franchise? Like, do you read anything into that, or do you think it's been overblown?
It's probably a little bit of both, right? Where there's a little bit of smoke, there's some fire. And then also, people like to overdo things. So probably a little bit of both from my opinion. But there's definitely been some, questions about commitment and how, he and Griff don't see eye to eye on everything as far as, managing his minutes or him wanting to play or not play or things of that nature. But I think the accurate thing, being a Laker fan who's used to drama, winning silences all of that. You just have a successful team, all that noise goes away. I think that's the bottom line. They just got to win, man. And then all of that stuff, kind of takes care of itself, the player GM relationships, whether or not he wants to be here. If you win, all that's solved, right? So that's got to be the goal going forward.
The only noise about Zion that I've actually really enjoyed, and I think he kind of poo-pooed it, was that report that Griff tried to play the piano for him or something in the room. I couldn't believe that was a real thing, but I'm kind of upset that maybe it wasn't, or at least Zion claims it wasn't. I wanted that to be true just because it's so ridiculous.
I'll say this. The guy who wrote that, Christian Clark, the stuff he's always told me about Pelican stuff, it's always come to fruition or come to be true after the fact. So I'm not going to say that Christian lied about anything. So I'm going to say at least he was told by the guys that he talks to that happened. So I'll say that, even if Zion and Griff say it didn't happen. But Christian's not the type of guy to put fake stuff out there.
No, and he's killed the Pelicans beat.
Exactly.
Too,
exactly.
So I'm still going to hold out hope that it was true, or at least they could try, just because that's so ridiculous.
Right.
Just given Zion's injury history, if you're the Pelicans this offseason, are you offering the max extension? And if you're Zion, given your injury history, are you taking it?
Yeah, I think with these stars, they seen between the Harden saga, the Anthony Davis saga, the Ben Simmons saga, it's pretty easy to navigate your way out of a place if you wanted. So worst come to worst, he'll secure his bag. And if he's not happy in a year or two, he'll probably just ask out. That's not a hurdle anymore for these guys. I'm not saying any, mental health issues are made up, but these guys will find a way to not play or, halfway be into it and then, find a way to get out. That's kind of what happens. Like, saw Harden basically quit any game. That Sacramento Kings game, Harden played before the trade.
Oh man,
that was one of the worst things I've ever seen from a quote unquote. Actually, he is a Hall of Famer, from a Hall of Fame player. It was supposed to be, have a standard of how he plays, and act like that. That was one of the worst things I've ever seen. As far as wanting to get yourself out of a place. That was low key embarrassing to the sport. But these guys will find a way to get out of a place they don't want to be. So I don't think it's a concern for Zion. I'll probably sign it. And then, like I said, year two is not happy, trade me.
I think there are never really going to be people who troll the Pelicans if and when they offer it. And we have this tendency on Twitter, whatever, specifically, where we just forget how good players are if they've missed any sort of extensive time. Zion was basically an all-NBA player last year. Like, you absolutely
he was
the extension if he's going to take it.
Right, especially in New Orleans too, right? You just don't, and that you feel for that fan base to an extent because you lose Chris Paul in his prime, Anthony Davis in his prime, and you get Zion and you lose him before his prime. That's just a lot over like a course of 10, 12 years, man. I don't think I've ever seen talent walk out of a place, at its peak like that in a 10, 15 year span. It's kind of crazy to think about.
The Pelicans defense specifically, you already mentioned, they've been like league average since their terrible start. It's dipped since the trade deadline, but there's a lot of stuff there. Like, I'm not crazy about the Jackson Hayes and playing with another big front courts that we've seen. But they've done just like a really good job of, for the most part, gobbling up the low hanging fruit. If it's like getting back in transition, the rebounding's been off lately, but they've done that fairly well. What do you attribute to them? I would say overachieving on the defensive end. If you're calling them maybe a league average defense for the year or close to it, how much credit does Willie Green deserve to that? Is that like a mindset? Is there anything specific that you've noticed? Is Herb Jones just that ridiculously good? Like,
I think it's a few things. I think when Willie first got there, I think he got, even early, he got Brandon to try on defense, which has been a knock on Brandon. Just the effort on that end has been non-existent at times through his career. I think he definitely upped the effort on that end. And secondly, it's just Herb Jones is just, he'll be an all NBA defender before his career is up. I'm going to say in the next 3 years. Like, that's how good he is defensively. And then they have another guard, Jose Alvarado, who is just pesky. He makes stuff happen. They just have a lot of guys that just try hard. And I always thought that CJ was a little bit underrated defensively. In Portland, he was just asked to guard a lot bigger guys in his position. And I think, that's kind of been rectified since he's come over. So, he's not a turnstile defensively, just average. I think Ingram's been average. I think Herb has been really good. And, JV struggles in pick and roll, but, he does finish possessions with rebounds. And, that stuff does matter, cleaning up possessions at the end. So, I think it's an all hands on deck board. I think that team understands that if they can just get to league average offensively with the weapons they have, they'll be in every game.
You mentioned Jose Alvarado is like a joy to watch. He is it was garbage time, granted, against the Suns, but he was like derailed Bismack Biyombo's roll to the basket. It's just 6-foot guy like fronting Bismack Biyombo on he's so much fun to watch. Yeah,
you need guys like that, when you build a culture, you know what I mean? You need guys like that who are gonna, establish a work ethic for everybody who comes in. And I think, that's what he does, Herb Jones does, and then Willie Green is, done as the head coach. But having guys on the roster who are going to claw and scrap every day, sets a tone for everybody else. I think that intangible stuff matters when you're trying to, build something from scratch, which is what New Orleans is trying to do, trying to just reset a basketball culture there. So all that stuff matters.
My final question on the Pelicans, we know they're missing Zion. Aside from Zion, is there just like a specific need, whether it's a specific player or player archetype that you think they need to try and add over the offseason, or at least to like reach that next level in the West?
Yeah, I think, and I said this, I think the an underrated part of that deal was getting Larry Nance. He's going to start scrimmaging next week, according to some reports I've read. And I think just adding a versatile frontline guy who can give them a different look when Jonas starts getting killed in pick and roll. They don't have that right now. This is just Hayes and Jonas and Hernan Gomez, and those guys are pretty much the same defensively, going to sit and drop, not going to get out and switch. So it's same attack method for the opposition. I think Larry Nance gives you a little more switchability and versatility on defense once he gets out there. So I think that's going to really help them, take another half step, defensively at some point. Other than that, man, probably just they can always use more shooting, man. Another guard who can shoot. The shooting that's the name of the game in the NBA, man. Can you stretch this floor and make them when it matters? So, it'd be nice if Devontae Graham could become efficient, but it's just not him. We in year 4 now. That's just who he is. He's a streaky guy.
Is there, and I know he's been shooting better since the trade deadline, but he just still doesn't play that much. Like, is there like Trey Murphy the third, like still part of this team's like long-term plan? I was really excited about him.
I think so. I think a part of it is, I think when I talk to people, when I asked him, I think Willie's kind of making him earn his keep a little bit. And I think that's just part of a rookie, making his way in the league. I think Willie himself was a late pick, a scrapper. So I think, guys like, Najee Marshall and Tony Snell may appeal to him a little more than the first round rookie. You know what I mean? But I think eventually, Trey, his talent's going to show, and he's going to sit those guys down. I think this is a good learning experience for him. I think, and Ingram has actually talked to the media about, keeping him locked in every day and having him understand the bigger picture about what's coming for him and not be too down on what's happening right now. So I think he's definitely a part of the long-term picture.